Welcome back to John's Films. You ever had an issue with DaVinci Resolve where it wouldn't run, but you couldn't figure out why, and nobody on the forums has that much info? Well, here's the best way for you to troubleshoot that. First, in DaVinci Resolve, make sure it's up, and if it's not, make sure it's dead. Right-click on your Start menu and go to Task Manager. Here in Task Manager, we're able to see a running list of all the active processes running. On Mac OS X, it's called Activity Monitor. Both places you can see what's running. Here's the sub-processes that are running under it, and you get to watch to see if these resources are changing at all. If they aren't, you're probably hung, or obviously it's not doing anything. So I click play and you can see my CPU slice is consuming portions of the processor, as well as my memory is holding pretty steady here as I'm going through and rendering in real time for this window each of the clips that I've got in my template here. So, if that's the case, super, but I can't tell too much from that, can I? I mean, I know the processor's working. It doesn't look like it's overworked. The GPU doesn't seem to be overworked. So, still, why isn't it working? Well, the next thing we're going to do is look at all the logs that come across Windows. And to do that, you would go to your event viewer. That, again, by right-clicking on the Start menu and choosing Event Viewer. Here under Windows Logs, and this is a log collector for all of Windows, you can click on Application, and Application has all of the logs that you might want to see for applications that have crashed. Now, a challenge with this, and something that you might want to understand, is there's a lot of data here. You can see this is just because the rules engine restarted something. Well, that's not great for me to know. So I can sort based on each of the individual levels, and the level that I'm looking for is error or critical. Here, I can now filter it down based on source, and I can look through these specifically for anything related to Resolve. And you'll see that down here in the general area. And it looks like Resolve has been really steady since 16.2, which has been my experience. It's been running fantastically. Really, the best thing to do would be to sort by time. And here I've sorted by time. I'm going to go back up to the very most recent. And here you'll be able to get an idea of not only do I have any errors that are coming up from a specific program, in this case it's from NZXT's CAM service, but you'll be looking for any that source from Resolve. And you can understand anything around it. So you'll notice here Resolve crashed 16.2.1.17 yesterday at 8:31 in the morning. It then used Windows reporting to report out that error. And you can get an idea of what else is going on in the system around this time. Unfortunately, in this case, there's not much to answer. I was using the Fusion system, and boom. We know now that something is going wrong in Fusion for some reason. So let's go figure out what that is. Well, if you've ever tried to use DaVinci Resolve support, or maybe you've gone on the forums and asked for help, they've asked you to run something very specific, and that is the capture logs batch file or script on OS X here in your DaVinci Resolve program files Blackmagic Design folder. This is on your C drive by default. It creates an output file to your directory that zips up all of the logs. Well, what are these logs and why do I need them? Well, that's an even better question. So where are these magical mythical logs? Well, they live in local user, app data, roaming, Blackmagic Design, DaVinci Resolve support, and logs. These logs give you a real-time stream and understanding of what's going on inside of your system. Resolve debug is the largest and most meaningful that is there. It starts back here, you can see 6:11, which was about 45 minutes ago. And I can zoom all the way down to real time to have an understanding of what's going on in my system. So let's see if we can find an error in here, and I can do that just by searching this. You'll notice there's an info, there's an error here. A decklink card failed to create instance. Well, that's because I no longer have my decklink card in my system. And so, of course, it's going to have an error. Doesn't have anything to turn to. But I can search this file using Control F for the Windows notepad if that's your tool of choice. Here's an error from a socket that failed to connect to a server. Here is driver panel connection failed. This is a problem that popped up on me just today, and it's why I made this video. My DaVinci Resolve micro panel, which I have on my desk here, doesn't seem to be responding, and it looks like the connection is failing. So I know that my panel is plugged in, but I don't know that it's attaching through the USB system to DaVinci Resolve. Again, with the deck link, here's an I/O. Failed to decode a clip, the lower third that I've got in there. That's interesting. Failed to decode the audio. That looks like a pretty normal error, given that I don't have any audio associated with it. I wonder if it's in a weird format or something. I never use the audio out of the lower third. That's something for me to research in the future. And that's it. So those are my errors that are running right now. It's pretty helpful to see. When you run that batch file, it zips up all of these so that the support team can see them. And you'll notice it also has a rolling log feature where it goes back a few days, so you can see what's going on over the last few days. Here I was benchmarking a 2070 Super, so I had that in my system, and you can see that it does a few things. It tells you during startup exactly what's happening. So this is starting DaVinci Resolve. It's getting the GPU involved. It's making sure that it's going to work. It's saying this is going to be our display GPU. And it's been up for 2.5 minutes. Here we've got that it's going to be using the same GPU for processing, and it's going to use CUDA libraries for it. There's a SDK for red that got loaded. Here's where it fails the deck link check to try and get it going. And here's where it starts up the daemons that do a lot of the encoding, decoding. And this gets interesting. You can see number of the threads that it's planning to use in this space is 8. There are 8 specific decoders out there. So we got an idea of kind of under the covers of Resolve. And here's where it says using 16 I/O threads, which is 8 generic and 8 red decode. So if you're using red footage, great. But if you're not, you've got the 8 thread readers. Starting the workers. This is where it tells you it's fully initialized the GPU and it's able to work. Here we go. This talks to you about the hardware encoder. And so what this is doing is querying the graphics card and saying, hey, you have a hardware accelerated encode decode. Can you tell me what features you support? And so you can see up to 8K at a bit depth of 8, 10, or 12 under Chroma, subsampling 420, 444. So this is a 2080 Ti, which has, actually this was the 2070 Super, wasn't it? So this one has one of the latest NVENC engines in it. You'll see similar for Intel CPUs with QuickSync. You'll see similar for AMD GPUs that have their own encoders. And here we go. So a summary of all that. Then we go into Fusion. We see what it's using, how it's running. But you get the idea. You can come through here and really get a good idea of what's not working. Here's an interesting one. So this was while I was running. Movie Create failed to read video track information from the file, the new intro that I had rendered. What I found was this render was bad, and I needed to go back and re-render just the new intro so that I could use it inside my composition. Of course, like all good hard-headed people, I had to try it 6 or 7 times and let it fail before I really went and looked into it. Now just scrolling through and seeing all of the errors that are out there. These can be helpful for the developers when they are working in the code, but it's not necessarily going to be helpful for you to come look at daily. If you do run into a bunch of errors, this would be a good place to come. And like I said, the zip file that this puts on your desktop when you run capture logs, that's what the support team is going to need if you're turning in DaVinci Resolve Studio's support request. So this is 3 tools that you can use for DaVinci Resolve to troubleshoot your errors. The first was the Task Manager, the second, Event Viewer, and third, DaVinci's built-in capture logs or log archive that you can view and see what happens as Resolve's executing. This is most helpful, I think, when you have failures when it's starting up. You want to know what's going on? Your Resolve debug is where it's at. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this useful. If so, click like and subscribe below, and have a great day.